Well, hello, folks. Once again, this is Julianne Lieberman, and I have the great pleasure of interviewing a friend of mine that I've known for a few years. And we are continuing our discussion on living life to the fullest. And just so happens that this person, once again, also has a vision disability. And I wanted to introduce Larry L. Lewis, and he's the president of Flying Blind LLC. And I'll let Larry pick up from here and describe what he does and a little bit about his background, and then we'll kind of move on to questions from there. Good afternoon, Larry. How are you?
Doing great, Joanne. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you and your audience and so forth. And it's great to be here. It's a rainy, cold afternoon in Cleveland, which is where I live and where my home office is. So it's nice to be inside and dry and talking to you folks. A little bit about myself. I am congenitally blind. I have no vision. I always like to start out by saying that I had a little bit of vision when I was younger and feel very fortunate to where, I had some travel vision, a little bit of, color perception and could see shapes and so forth. Because even though I don't have any vision now, I just have, it's just really nice to be able to have had that at one point to draw reference to things when people are describing things and so forth. But for all intents and purposes, I don't have any vision. I'm totally blind and have been so for quite some time. I had glaucoma, which was brought about by pretty much cataracts and a whole mess of other problems. And, just always like to start by saying that. I've been in the industry of adaptive technology really since its inception in some way, shape, or form, probably going back about 30 some odd years when I first got my hands on a VersaBraille machine. So I've been using technology in some way, shape, or form in educational or employment settings for well over 30 years. Really the big steps in my adaptive tech journey have been the VersaBraille, the Braille and Speak, which I think a lot of us who are Braille users have used, and then the emergence of the Braille Note. I was actually fortunate enough to be working with HumanWare and help launch that product about 10 years ago. And then more recently have been a big proponent of a lot of the mobile technologies that have come to the market, a lot of the mobile screen readers, and in more recent times, a lot of the Apple type products working in conjunction with many of today's newer type of Braille displays and so forth. So my company, Flying Blind, is really in the business of doing a few different things. We work with companies that are rolling out new emerging type technologies, and these companies may not be as big as like a Freedom Scientific or a HumanWare or an Optelec or a company like that. They might be a little bit smaller, and they might need assistance and expertise in certain areas without having to hire somebody full time. So I focus a lot of my business model on outsourcing projects, with my background being in education and sales and marketing. I provide a number of different services to a number of different companies that are either rolling out products, or I also work with organizations that are expanding their scope of service, such as different business models that they might be wanting to adjust to provide better services to clients and so forth. And then lastly, I work a lot with end users, reselling equipment, providing training, and website remediation type services and so on. So there's really three different types of things that me and my staff are really involved in. I have some people that work under contract for me and to help me out with things because I just don't have enough time to do a lot of the fine detail, day-to-day stuff that I'd like to be involved in. There's a fair amount of travel with what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not as much travel as in previous jobs, but a fair amount of travel with face-to-face work with clientele, as well as just part of the whole conference gig. We were talking about CSUN and so forth before the recording today. Different types of conferences, those sorts of things take up a lot of time for either me presenting at these conferences or going to these conferences for my own professional growth. So that's a little bit about what I do. As I said, I live in Northeast Ohio. I have lived here for quite some time. I'm a Midwest boy at heart, although I've lived all over the place. So I really enjoy the Midwest, and I'll enjoy all areas of the country, but I'm just probably a little bit more tied to the Midwest than other parts.
Well, my first question, since you mentioned Cleveland, is, of course, have you been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I have. I've been there a few times, and I've actually organized and took a group of individuals who are blind and got a few of the docents there to help out. We couldn't touch as much as I wanted to touch, but they were very helpful about walking around and describing things. But a lot of the memorabilia we couldn't touch. But the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, if you are vision impaired and you are with somebody who is not and they don't mind reading, it's a great tour. I've been there for parties like galas and stuff, and then I've also been there. I've taken guests from out of town there, and like I said, I've organized things where I've brought groups of people who are vision impaired. The sound there is fantastic. The different things you can listen to. And again, if you have somebody who's very descriptive and can walk around with you, it's a really great museum.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because my work here in Philadelphia area, life has a funny way of connecting people sometimes along the way. And we are going to have a guest speaker at our regional conference for the local affiliate of the Pennsylvania Council of the Blind, and it's Joel Snyder, who does audio description. And he has done different museum tours as well as doing some broadcast media as well. So as soon as you said that, it'd be great to have someone come through that can provide a good descriptive, audio description for you. I thought, wow, maybe we should suggest Joel contact the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and see if they can do some type of audio description tour. I just think the way he describes his services, that it's not just for people that have vision impairment, that people sometimes just don't see what they're looking at, and which is very true. They're not observant. So I think that would be a wonderful connection here. So you never know. You might be hearing from somebody.
Well, that's a great point, because, I can remember, walking with this group, and the person I was next to said, "Oh, it looks like a made-up card from a kid, like a kid that makes up a card." And because we had the appropriate knowledge and the docent there, that was Jim Morrison's card to his mother for Mother's Day.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing?
So a lot of things can take on a whole new meaning, even for people who can see, when you have proper tour guides and people that really have an understanding of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if I ever do get a chance to come out and visit Cleveland, that is going to be first thing on my list. I do want to see that.
I'll hook you up and go down there with you.
Oh, that'd be great. We'll have to make a plan for that. I'll have to find a reason to travel out that direction and make sure I contact you when I'm doing that. I also wanted to ask you about you said you've got a number of people that support you. What type of jobs do they do?
Like I said, pretty much my strengths are more in project management, sales, and marketing. But I understand enough about the tech game to know that there's lots of parts of it that I don't really want to do. And the primary part that I don't want to do is dealing with internet code. We do a lot of e-publications and getting stuff ready for email announcements, and we have a fairly deep website and so forth. And it's really my goal to keep that is visually stimulating for a sighted decision maker as much as accessible for somebody who can't see. It's a real balancing act. So the people who support me are more in the lines of doing some of the back-end grunt work on the coding front and some of the sales and marketing details, where I would be a little bit more big picture with a lot of the things that I want to do. I get a little extra assistance when we do some things with podcasting, with state-of-the-art recording capabilities and stuff that I just don't do on my own. Yeah, I think
recognizing our own limitations is probably one of the things that's to our advantage in business.
I'm thinking about letting the bookkeeping go and letting my accountant do more. So that's another area.
One more thing you have to delegate, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's just less hassle to pay for certain things to be done. And I think when somebody tries to do everything themselves, it takes away from the things that they're really good at because they're trying to do too much.
Yes, I can't agree with you more. I think that's true with any type of business, let alone the small business person's, perspective is can't do it all well.
Right.
You can do it all, but that doesn't mean you can do it all well. And
Right.
so you try to develop your resources so that you can do what you do best. And it sounds like that's what you pretty much have worked out fairly well there. And yes, I agree that your website is both, from having some vision myself, both enough engaging visually as well as being totally accessible. So I congratulate on that, on the efforts on that part for the person who's doing the coding too.
Yeah, thanks. We're going to do some things to make it even a little better, I think, but we're off to a pretty good start. And I mean, we have a opt-in email list for e-publications for around about 5,500 clean email addresses who can unsubscribe anytime they want. And we get about 19,000 unique visitors a month. So
that's
pretty happy
good
with where it's at. But I'm seeing that we're kind of plateauing, so I want to do some things to try to jumpstart things a little more coming up.
So you mentioned a couple of the technology products that you started out using. Can you describe just briefly what the VersaBraille was?
Well, the VersaBraille was really the first entry into, for blind people, aside from being able to use a electronic Braille writer per se. The VersaBraille was kind of the first entry point for like the whole note-taking market. What you could do, it was a machine that you could put a cassette tape in that might have data on it, and you could actually read books that were in this specific file format for the VersaBraille. And I can remember it was my first time ever reading a book in refreshable Braille using the VersaBraille. And there was also some data entry capability, and the whole concept of chording and note-taking commands really was born out of that product. It was sort of the revolutionary type thing back in the late 70s, early 80s. And so
and this just only had refreshable Braille. It didn't have any speech output to it. Is that correct?
It's been over 30 years. I don't believe there might have been speech added later, but I'm pretty sure it was just all Braille.
Yeah.
I'm like 99% sure that it was just all Braille, and that was even when a lot of times I was always mainstreamed in the mainstream schools. A lot of times they wanted to move away from Braille because of the cost and so forth, but I always had a few good advocates in my corner to make sure that from a literacy standpoint, somebody like myself who could not read print, Braille was really imperative to me during those early years as far as being able to establish some literacy skills that I wouldn't have had without it.
Yeah, I agree that, in fact, so many of in my studies that I'm working in right now at Salus, the Salus University, a lot of the teachers of the visually impaired really are pointing out the real need for working harder in the Braille skills area on Braille literacy. And as an adult with a vision impairment, when I was diagnosed early, I was not given the opportunity to learn Braille because it was one of those things, she'll never need it. She'll always have enough useful vision. She'll be able to read print. Well, little did they know that my progression of my vision loss would be severe enough that reading print with very high magnification is the only way I can do it, which isn't practical for reading for any type of volume of material. So Braille, would have been a very wonderful aspect to have in my toolkit now. That unfortunately is a struggle to I would never be proficient at reading it. I would probably be what they would call a label reader at the very best.
Yeah.
And that's, again, that is very useful in itself. But I agree with you that having that Braille literacy probably served you very, very well in the long run because it's a whole lot easier to read things independently if you have that additional medium to rely on.
It's even more than that because, you lost your vision, I think, a little bit later than me. So you already had some foundations of literacy in place.
Correct.
I may not read books and books of Braille now, but because I read and wrote Braille growing up, I can construct the sentence with a subject, verb, object.
Right.
And you could achieve that. I'm not saying that every adult who loses their vision later on needs to be super Braille proficient. I'm saying that if you, have no other options, or your options are limited, or you have a declining visual situation when you're very young, you've got to include that. I mean,
Yeah.
I can get an email from somebody who's blind and tell if they're a Braille reader or not just by the email I get.
I would bet. I would bet. Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think that I'm not one of these people that says, well, everybody has to, read all the Braille at this incredibly high literate efficient level. But I am saying that I don't see. There may always be exceptions to the rule, but I don't see how somebody who does not have print as an alternative from the ages of like first grade to middle school or whatever, how they can establish that without that framework for literacy without Braille.
And thank goodness that the technology is what we have today, because you have so many options rather than waiting for your Braille book to come in, or any type of having someone produce something in Braille. These technologies, as you mentioned from the beginning of the VersaBraille, they also had the options now with the note takers and the Braille displays and everything that you're involved in so carefully. I mean, it's amazing the progress that has come over the years, and you've been there since the beginnings in a lot of this, using it firsthand. I think we're at an age now where of technology. I mean, everything's not perfect, but it is definitely a lot better than it was, say, 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about what other things you like to do. We talked a lot about your business, but I know from previous conversations that you are very much a avid exercise fitness person. And tell us a little bit how that might be different for a person that is vision impaired, or is there any difference?
Well, I enjoy a number of things. If I were probably born today, I would probably be diagnosed as hyperactive. So, in the 70s or whatever, I was just a very energetic kid. So, thankfully, I didn't have to do any of the types of ADHD or whatever that kids have to do today. Because I just spent a lot of time being very active. So, I really enjoy outdoors. I have a couple of very active pet dogs that we take out hiking every day. We're not too far from a lot of wooded areas and wooded trails, so I do a lot of hiking outside. I am, because of the types of jobs that I do where I'm sitting a lot or in airplanes a lot and stuff, I'm really a proponent of fitness and good nutrition, not for the fact that I just don't want to be heavy or whatever. I just feel better when I'm like that. So I've always been involved in some kind of fitness activity or whatever. There was a hiatus, I would say, about 8 to 10 years ago when I was getting very busy and wasn't doing that kind of stuff as much as I should. I'm a big fan of individualized sports and activities. Probably the biggest thing that I do on a consistent level is I train in a grappling style martial art called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And what that is it's kind of like a little bit like wrestling, but it teaches you how to also be effective as far as defending yourself if you're on your back.
Okay.
So whether you're on top or on your back, and it basically allows you to pretty much control a person and even submit a person if you have to, if somebody is on top of you and you're on your back. So it's a lot like wrestling, but it's very different. I mean,
so in other words, don't mess with Larry.
Yeah, don't try to take away my laptop.
That's right.
So,
they would pick the wrong person, huh?
Yeah, and I mean, I do it, like I said, just because I've done a few different types of martial arts over the years, but this one makes the most sense for people who are blind, and for people who have vision impairments. And, as out and as visible as I am sometimes, it's also, I got into martial arts a long time ago for that reason, because there is an element of society who will take advantage and try to victimize people who have any sort of disability.
That's true.
I mean, we just had, a few years ago, a really bad situation happened to a young lady who was basically getting off the bus and dragged behind a building and assaulted. The cameras got the guy at least still of the guy, security cameras, but she had no eyewitness or anything.
Right.
So I mean, so on a serious note, I mean that's also something that on my off time I've in the past have organized seminars and stuff like that at my school for people who are vision impaired to have like a half day or a 1 day seminar. We've done some stuff with our ACB affiliate in Ohio, their state conventions and stuff. So, it's something that I enjoy outside of the scope of adaptive technology. Plus, it keeps me in really good shape.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah. As far as your traveling is concerned, then, when you're on the road, what do you do for exercise when you're on the road?
I actually find gyms that teach that martial art.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
And it also is a way for me to make friends outside of, like, the bar scene or whatever that are pretty into doing what I like to do. And it gives me different training partners and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I do that a lot. I go to ball games a lot. That's not exactly fitness, but I have been to, I would say, about 15 or 16 of the different stadiums around the country.
Oh, that's neat. And what kind of sports? When you said...
Well, I've been on a roll with the baseball stadium. It's sad to say I haven't made Philly yet.
Well, Larry, when you come to Philadelphia, and if it's during the season, you will have a seat. I'll make sure of it.
That's awesome, because I've been to the Orioles and the Nationals and even the Yankees old stadium before they closed it. I haven't been to Philly yet.
Well, Citizens Bank Park is a really lovely park, and as far as the staff that works there, they're very accommodating, and not to mention the fact that we have great seats from a visual standpoint, but also from an accessibility standpoint. It's only a few steps back in to get the food.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yes, we're right near the Hall of Fame Club. So when you're coming into town, you can count on it. Just let me know when you're coming into Philly, and if it's during season, I'll make sure one way or the other to get tickets.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Well, I'm glad to hear that there's more to life than just technology. Some of us that get very involved and very excited about our profession, sometimes we do have a tendency to get a little bit too narrow in our focus. And what you've explained to us today is that how you've managed to, even being on the road, you've managed to live a very full life as far as finding entertainment, with between the Hall of Fame and going to the different sporting events, stadiums across the country, and then seeking out. That's what really impressed me, the fact that you seek out those martial arts studios before you travel. I think that's pretty great. How do you research that? Do you do that on the internet?
Yeah, the internet, but also word of mouth. My coaches and stuff. But,
oh, great.
To follow up with what you just said, to me, technology is a way to get things done, and it's always been that way. I mean, my background is in English and special education. I'm not a programmer. I'm not a computer science guy. I look at technology as a way to get things done, and that's what I've always tried to impart in any technology job that I've done. I'm not a guy who really cares about. I can do it, but I don't really care about specking out a product to see how fast the gigahertz processor is and stuff. I want to know that it's fast enough to get what I need to do done.
Yeah, you take it from the productivity standpoint. What can it do for me as a tool?
Yeah, I mean, I can do that if I'm working with, like, a chief technology officer, but it's not my thing. I want to use technology to make my life better, not use technology to be my life.
Right. Right. In other words, you can speak the geek when you need to, but when it comes down to it, you take it from the perspective of what's the productivity, what is the purpose of that tool, and how best to take advantage of it to get what you need done.
Right.
You and I both come from the same standpoint on that, and I know you get these questions all the time. People call up and say, "Hey, I heard about XYZ product. I'm really excited about it. Should I go get it?" And always the first question that I ask is, "Well, what were you planning on using this for?" and if they, it doesn't meet the specifications or the purpose of the device, then I advise them to try something else. Or did you know it can also do this? this, and is it worth the investment to do this other function as well, or is there another way to do it? And I think that is the perspective that unfortunately not too many people have when they think about gadgets, because they want the greatest, the newest and best thing on the market, which is great for the manufacturers that might be listening in on our interviews. Yes, agreed. But you always have to get the new iThingy, right, or the next generation of technology. But at the same time, as you make these decisions on what are the advantages of making that extra purchase and that extra investment in it. So. Well, I really appreciate you taking this time to talk to us, Larry. And again, I hope the weather improves in Cleveland. It's not any better in Philly today as well. It's raining and cold today too.
Well, 75 and sunny tomorrow. So.
That's what they tell me here in Philadelphia by Monday. We'll be 80 by Monday. So, it's this time of year. We're in April, and that it'll kind of change at the moment's notice. So, and you know what will happen? We'll be complaining how hot it is come July. So, it's always one thing or the other, right?
I very rarely complain about that. I prefer the warmth, which is why I don't know why I stay in the Midwest. But,
yeah, I was gonna say Cleveland is they have tough winters in Cleveland, don't they?
Yeah, they're pretty brutal. I mean, it was not pretty this year. It doesn't say a lot for global warming. So.
Although we refer to it now as climate change.
Yeah.
So I think that's what the message is, that the reason why we're getting heavier winters is because the climate has changed. So, I think that it's all a matter of semantics. You were the English major, right?
Exactly.
It all comes down to that. Well, again, thank you so much, Larry, and I look forward to other conferences which we hopefully will be crossing paths, perhaps doing presentations as well. And if anyone is ever in the area at any of these conferences, please look for Larry L. Lewis, Flying Blind LLC. And before we say goodbye, could you please give us your website and any other contact information that someone may have a question or want a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, you can go to www.flying, F as in Frank, L-Y-I, N as in Nancy, G as in Golf, -blind, BLIND.com. You can also always email me at larry.lewis, Lewis, at flying-blind.com. And I'll always get back to you by email, and I'm pretty good about checking voicemails as well. My phone number is +1 216-381-8107. And it's been great. I appreciate the opportunity, and just taking a little bit of time and getting to speak to you and your audience about some of the things that are important to me. So thanks a million.
And well, I appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully we'll have everything up at the website very soon at my website, and you'll be able to link and hear more about Larry. And I'll also make sure that there is a text link for the information that you just gave us, so they can contact you directly that way too. Again, thanks a lot, Larry, and talk to you soon.
Great.
Hang on. Trying to stop it.